So many different X titles, but when to read them? Well, I hope that's a question I can answer in today's video. So, let's get started. And welcome back, everybody. Just as promised, during my X-Men reading order, I said that I was going to make a video specifically talking about when to best read the spin-off X-Men titles, the ongoing series or the Wolverine miniseries that I've been asked about so often. So I hope to answer that question here on this video. So before I started working on my next reading order, which by the way is Usagi Yojimbo, thank you to our patrons for voting for that, I decided to do this particular video. So, X-Men. There are so many titles. Mainly I'm focusing on everything leading up to adjectiveless X-Men. So let's go ahead and get started. So we'll start with the very first X title spin-off, the one that paved the way for other ongoing series, and that is New Mutants. Now, New Mutants first premiered in 1982. So I think the best place to read New Mutants is while reading this particular omnibus right here. This is Uncanny X-Men Volume 3. So if you want to read New Mutants, I think the best place to read it is right after this particular issue, issue 166 of Uncanny X-Men. I think before jumping into issue 167, you can read the New Mutants graphic novel #1 that is collected in this particular omnibus, and that gets you used to these new characters, these new kids. So why the title New Mutants? Why New X-Men? That's funny, because Stan Lee's original idea was to call X-Men the Mutants. So Chris Claremont and his co-creator Bob McLeod, and of course all the editors, decided to call it the New Mutants. Kind of a big thank you to Stan Lee. But that is where I'm suggesting reading the first appearance of the New Mutants. Now you can continue their adventures or go back and forth between X-Men and New Mutants. That is completely up to you. What I like to do is read specific storylines and then go back to the other series to see what those characters were doing during said storyline. Now, you're going to see this omnibus twice, and this is, again, just my opinion, but I think the best place to read the Wolverine miniseries by Frank Miller and Chris Claremont is when you're reading this particular omnibus again. But this time, it's best to read that miniseries right after issue 170, The Battle in the Morlock Tunnels. Now, when I'm doing these, I am going to stay away from spoilers, so I will try to kind of beat around the bush as to why I'm deciding to read these stories during the specific time. But yes, after this particular story, because Wolverine goes MIA, you don't see him again until just a little bit later, but you want to read the 4-issue miniseries contained in this omnibus right after issue 170. And we are going to come back to this omnibus again, but I think just read those 4 issues and then go back to issue 171 of Uncanny. Now, the big one I get asked about on this list about collected editions is X-Factor, because X-Factor hasn't been collected in an oversized format. There is no omnibus. Yes, there is an upcoming omnibus, and I will talk about when to read that. But the beginning of X-Factor isn't collected in an oversized hardcover. It's not until the Mutant Massacre that we start getting issues of X-Factor collected in oversized hardcover. So we do have an epic collection of this material. But I think before reading all those issues leading up to X-Factor #1, for those of you that have read it, because there's a big, huge return of a character in this particular series, I think it's best to read this classic story, also not collected in oversized format, and that is Uncanny X-Men 201, which is the battle for the leadership of the X-Men. Immediately after reading that, you can come to this epic collection and read all the stories that lead into X-Factor #1 in this epic collection. Next up is this omnibus right here, also available in epic collections, and that is Excalibur Volume 1. Now, when to best read this is a huge spoiler. I'm not going to talk about why, but I'm going to tell you when. So when to best read this is after reading this particular storyline, Fall of the Mutants. And for those of you asking if this is ever going to be reprinted as an omnibus, stay tuned. Alright, so here we have Fall of the Mutants. It's been released as an oversized hardcover and an X-Men milestone. I think it's important to read Excalibur, the one-shot that's in here, and then Excalibur, the rest of the series, if you want, after reading the events of Uncanny X-Men 227. So after reading this particular issue, not the aftermath, I think it's important to come to this omnibus and read about the remaining characters and what happened to them after the Mutant Massacre, and how and why they built this particular team. Remember when I said we were going to come back to this omnibus? Well, that's because Wolverine has an ongoing series in this omnibus. But there's some Marvel Comic Presents issues that predate that ongoing series and lead into the ongoing series. Now, when I think is the best time to read those particular stories, that's during this, well, soon to be omnibus later on this year when this is reprinted, the Inferno Prologue. Either after issue 234 of Uncanny X-Men, or the one that I strongly suggest reading is the Uncanny X-Men Annual number 12. Immediately after that, you should read the 10-issue segments of Marvel Comics Presents that features Wolverine, and then that leads into Wolverine number 1. And this sets the new status quo for Wolverine. The whole patch thing, the whole Madripoor thing, that all happens within these pages by Chris Claremont and Big John Buscema. But I think that is when to best read this particular ongoing series. And then, of course, you can continue the ongoing series or go back and forth between this and Uncanny X-Men. We're not quite done with this omnibus yet because there is one more big story in here that I'm sure lots of people are wondering when to read, and that is the Weapon X storyline. And that is the story that kicks off this omnibus. That's the way this particular omnibus was mapped. I'm pretty sure if they were to do the remapping on Wolverine, this would have been collected in the publishing order, not the chronological order, because it seems like an odd place. But yes, when to read Barry Windsor Smith's classic, Weapon X. And this particular story was featured in the pages of Marvel Comics Presents 72 is where it all started. So, the best place to read it, I think, to get the best out of the story is right after the Extinction Agenda. So, before the X-Men fly off into space to go be with Professor Xavier, I think this is a really good place to read it. Of course, you can read it anytime you ever want to know about Wolverine, but immediately after this event right here, the Extinction Agenda, also available in X-Men Milestones, read this particular book. Now, this isn't the only book that will spin out of this particular event. There's one more book I need to talk about, and that is When New Mutants Became X-Force. So, following the events of this, issue 97 of New Mutants, issue 98 is collected here. But that's really the beginning of X-Force. And of course, issue 98 also being the first appearance of this much beloved character that has blown up, and one day we'll see him in the MCU, and that is Gideon. Yeah, you all know who I'm talking about. But all of this, issues 98, 99, 100, and of course the annual, lead into one of the top-selling comic books of all time, When New Mutants Became X-Force. So after New Mutants 100, the title was renamed to X-Force and renumbered to a number 1. And all of that takes place after the Extinction Agenda. While not being a number 1 issue, this is issue 71 of X-Factor. All new, all different X-Factor. It's like talking about Giant Size X-Men number 1. It's when the lineup completely changes. It's when Peter David takes these obscure characters and puts them in a huge spotlight. So when to best read X-Factor 71, which is also going to be collected in an omnibus. Actually, I think it comes out next month. Where to best read this? During this particular book, the X-Men by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, Omnibus Volume 2. After the Muir Island saga, so issue 280 of Uncanny X-Men and issue 70 of X-Factor, that's when you can jump in and read about those new characters like Strong Guy and Polaris and Havoc. Now, we're not done with this book yet, because during this omnibus is the creation of the number 1 best-selling comic book of all time, Adjectiveless X-Men, number 1. So that's right, Jim Lee and Chris Claremont launched a new title, leaving out the Uncanny, and it became X-Men. This is the split of the blue and gold team. This is the beginning of it, and of course, it's already mapped out perfectly in this omnibus. It follows the issues of the Muir Island saga, issue number 70 of X-Factor that I just talked about, Uncanny X-Men 280. Jump right into X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men. Now, this is of course the blue team. If you want to read about the gold team, continuing Uncanny X-Men is this oversized hardcover, also available in trade paperback, and will be available in an Epic collection later this year, early next year, and that is Bishop's Crossing. So this is where you will find Uncanny X-Men 281, the gold team, and over here is X-Men, Adjectiveless X-Men number 1, the blue team. And that, as they say, is that. Now, if you're interested in any of these books or their reprints when they come out, don't forget to check out our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They pride themselves on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Check out the bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. CGN is excited to announce that they are now taking pre-orders. They're making it easier for you to ensure that you don't miss out on the hottest releases. CGN is currently running a special promotion for your mentees. If you're a first-time customer, let them know that that you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. This promotion is valid for U.S. customers only. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount and quality shipping and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that's when I suggest reading these X-Men spin-off titles. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you want me to continue this series sometime down the road, focusing on books that happen after Adjectiveless X-Men. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications to let you know when our videos are going live. We are on Spreadshop and on Patreon. Amazing ways to support the channel. And more importantly, everyone, please stay healthy, stay safe, and much love.